We are here with director Avi Nesher, one of Israel's most important directors and director of The Other Story, his most recent film until his film that will be coming out and be seen in America shortly called Image of Victory. Do I have the translation correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Look out for that next one. But for now, we're talking about The Other Story. Avi, where did this film come from?
Well, the film came from this tremendous sense of strife within Israel that the secular and the religious are becoming pretty much what the nose in the south used to be, in America, a couple of centuries ago. And it got to a point where the hostility between the two sides was so great that the horrible words civil war was actually sounded out, because basically secular people felt that they're being subjugated slowly but surely to a way of life that they will never accept. And religious people feel that the secular people, through the internet, which is the greatest evil of all, as we know, is invading and trying to change their way of life. And basically nobody was willing to recognize that narratives can coexist within a given larger story. And it was important for me to tell two totally conflicting stories, a religious one and not even a secular one, a pagan one. The exact opposite of the monotheistic Haredi experience, and make them coexist within one narrative. So obviously one aspires to entertain, but one aspires to entertain while asking for 2 hours of attention from an audience. And my aspiration was to have religious people and secular people within the same movie house, because the movie house is kind of a house of worship unto itself. It's sort of the synagogue of film lovers. And I think it's once you see, the reason I love watching movies in a movie house as opposed to in streaming is because the whole concept of community. In Judaism, we are supposed to pray within a minyan, right? 10 people. So, God is certainly not hard of hearing. God can hear one person praying. Why 10 people? Because it's very, very important to have 10 people adhere to the same narrative. It just amplifies the importance of the validity of the narrative. And cinema is much the same way. When you have 500 people, in a theater sharing the same narrative, even if it's a conflicting narrative such as the one in The Other Story, it makes dialogue, much more accessible. And much to my great delight, The Other Story was a great success in Israel, and it's in its minor way, in its small way, did open up some venues of dialogue. Art can claim a very small credit for social change, but things now are not as bad as they used to be.
It's interesting, we show films here at the JCC all the time, and I've never seen two people leave the movie theater with the same exact opinion. It's like they see different movies as they come out. So this person sees this side, the other person sees that side. And I think a lot of that is about acknowledging that there's different ways of interpreting a narrative and seeing a narrative, and everybody brings their own experience to it. And this all relates to Passover for me. As far as first of all, telling a story, which is one of the leading commandments of Passover, is to sit there and to tell the story, whatever it would be. You call your film The Other Story. Why did you title it that? And why is it so important to tell a story?
Well, the whole idea of Pesach is getting a lot of people together. It's the ultimate box office holiday, right? If you have only 3-4 people sharing your Passover Seder, you haven't tried hard enough. Because the whole idea, again, is to have, a lot of people telling and retelling one narrative. So the narrative becomes something that unites all those people that you spoke about who see movies in a different way, right? So you cannot see that you cannot see the Haggadah in a different way. The Haggadah, commands only one side. It's our side. It does not tell the Egyptian side. As you say, come see Image of Victory. It tells both sides, but not about Passover. So for me, in order to coexist, one has to accept the story that is not ours. And by accepting, I do not mean that one has to adhere to it, or one has to alter one's narrative, or one has to, start arguing which one is right or wrong. One has to accept what you said, that there are different points of view in different venues, and two people can observe the same set of facts and tell two conflicting stories about exactly these facts. And these two people still can get along if we respect the other's right to have a different version of reality than ours. And for me, I mean, that was the main reason I made the other story. To have likable people, on two sides of the equation, seeing things completely differently, and you have to respect the validity of each point of view, because they are likable, and because you really don't want to see them killing each other, and because there is a way of coming to understanding. And the very last word that the Joy Rigger speaks in the movie is tolerable. So we cannot hope for a perfect world. We cannot even hope for a really good world. We can hope for an acceptable world. And if we have an acceptable world where no one kills each other, that's a big step ahead.
An interesting element in the film, and an interesting element in when I'm thinking about the Haggadah and the story of Passover, is, does it matter whether it's true or not? And is there any kind of truth there? I think throughout the film, people are often looking into fiction and seeing this balance between what's real and what's not necessarily real. But is there an objective reality? Is the Passover story something that we see as that needs to be real in order to learn from it?
Well, in the other story, not only do you have these flashes, these flights of imagination where your character sees something that is completely not there. One of the greatest virtues of the other story is the lead characters finally willing, to stop being honest and lie in order to accommodate, an appeasement. And again, I just come from a place where the value of life surpasses all other values. And I don't care much for justice, and I don't care much for right or wrong. I just really care much for, for life, to find an equitable solution, whether it allocates justice or not is a minor point. I mean, again, I come from a part of the world where everybody's so right, then life becomes secondary. So, again, it comes back to storytelling. If within the story you can find the other version acceptable, then you do not have to demand justice. You just have to demand, some kind of an understanding how we coexist without agreeing completely to who is right and who is wrong. And for me, Passover in many ways is really about our story. It's how we are right and they are wrong, and the Egyptians, should drown and we should cross the sea. And it's a song of freedom. It's one way of telling a story. One has to go a long way in order to adapt it to the 21st century, where the whole notion of right or wrong has somewhat taken a step backwards, and perhaps importantly so.
That's fascinating. How do you celebrate Passover? What do you do?
My wife's family is the loveliest family of all time. They're like a tribe of a lot of people, and we get together. And my mother is 98 years old, a Holocaust survivor, and for her, sitting within this tribe of this mass of humanity in Israel, a miracle unto itself, is her ultimate triumph over evil. So for me, Passover is just watching my mother reliving her life and celebrating her life, and the joys of the narratives of family. For me, it's the Jewish Christmas.
Thank you, Avi.